What's up, everybody? Chris Flick here, Chris Flick Podcast, episode number 117. Now, in my job here at the farm, I do a lot of stuff working with the youth, like anywhere from middle school, college, high school, elementary school, 4-year-olds even. I got some preschoolers coming out here working out and having some fun, right? On the flip side of that life cycle, man, I got one member, one client. I'll go visit him in his apartment. He's in his 80s, former police officer, cool guy. Interesting guy. He's always good to talk to. I'll go to his house and we'll go over and we'll do some exercises from the chair, get him standing up, trying to get him moving a little bit better, right? Trying to put a little bit of life back into his years that he has here. He's got a daughter, he's got a grandchild, and we want to keep him moving and keep him as healthy as possible for as long as possible. While I'm there, he's got the news on, man. Sometimes it's MSNBC, sometimes it's CNN, sometimes it's Fox News. I ask him about this, and he's like, well, I just try to get opinions, from all angles, right? I thought that was a great idea. Kudos to you, man. But as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the news, everything is a crisis. Everything's a crisis. Some of it for good reason. Roe versus Wade, that got people up in arms, probably for good reason, right? That's a crisis. Whatever's going on right now between Russia and the Ukraine, crisis. Our American border, crisis. Something Kamala Harris may have said, or Joe Biden said, or some other political figure. Big crisis. Everything is a crisis. And it reminds me of that story about the boy who cried wolf. It's like, if everything is so big and scary, what happens when something really bad does happen? Are we going to be kind of deconditioned to the seriousness of it because everything is that way? Or are we going to be able to differentiate between what is some stuff that might just be some kind of catchy, bogus headline, or is this going to be a legitimate threat to, say, our safety or, to whatever is going on here in our country? Now, as I'm listening to that, I'm thinking about a little story that I shared last week in our newsletter. Well, if you go to chrisflick.net, you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter where we get a couple hundred people opening that up and usually get some good feedback, and it's always nice to hear from people when they check it out. And in that newsletter, I shared a story that I always try to keep in mind. Once upon a time, there was a farmer in the central region of China. He didn't have a lot of money, and instead of a tractor, he used an old horse to plow his field. One afternoon, while working in the field, the horse dropped dead. Everyone in the village said, "Oh, what a horrible thing to happen." The farmer simply, "We'll see." He was so at peace and so calm that everyone in the village got together and, admiring his attitude, gave him a new horse as a gift. Everyone's reaction now was, "What a lucky man," and the farmer said, "We'll see." A couple of days later, the new horse jumped the fence and ran away. Everyone in the village shook their heads and said, "What a poor fellow." The farmer smiled and said, "We'll see." Eventually, the horse found his way home, and everyone again said, "What a fortunate man." The farmer said, "We'll see." Later in the year, the farmer's young boy went out riding on the horse and fell and broke his leg. Everyone in the village said, "What a shame for the poor boy." The farmer said, "We'll see." 2 days later, the army came into a village to draft new recruits. When they saw that the farmer's son had a broken leg, they decided not to recruit him. Everyone said, "What a fortunate young man." I think you know what the farmer said. The farmer smiled again and said, "We'll see." So the moral of this story here is that there's no use in overreacting to the events and circumstances of our everyday lives. Many times what looks like a setback may actually be a gift in disguise. When our hearts are in the right place and all events and circumstances are gifts that we can learn valuable lessons from. So with everything that happens, right, we always have, something terrible happens now, and then 5 years down the road you look back and you say, I'm grateful that happened to me. I'm very fortunate that happened to me. Oftentimes the worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you, right, on a personal level. Compare that to some other people that had some tough, devastating lives. Their stuff might be worse than yours, right? So we have to try to keep some things in perspective, right? Let's just say that, your car broke down, right? If that's the worst thing that ever happened to you, I think you got a good thing going on. Because if you take a look across the globe, there's some terrible things going on, right? We have to keep our mind. We have to keep perspective in mind. We have to keep the big picture in mind. We have to understand that not everything is this devastating crisis. This is not cable news, right? Our life is not whatever these newscasters try to portray it to be. We control how we respond to situations. The environment, the world, the community, they're going to throw stuff at us. We can't control that. We can't control the external noise that comes at us. But what we can control is our internal response. I'm reminded of the great Viktor Frankl, man. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He noticed that when he was in his prison camp, when he was, he was a Jewish man that was in these death camps, basically, right? The Nazis were just exterminating people left and right, all around him. And he noticed one thing. He's like, I knew that somebody was going to give in and die the moment that they kind of gave up in their mind. He said, there's only one thing I can control in this situation, and that's how I respond to everything that's happened to me. The moment I give in, the moment I kind of give up on hope, to give up on living, that's the moment that these people started developing an illness. They just kind of didn't want to move, and the whole chain of events started that ended with them probably being thrown in a hole because they're no longer alive, right? So you got to remember, not everything is like a death sentence for us. Something bad happens, fine. Remember with the farmer, he said, we'll see. Let's see how this thing plays out. Let's see how the border crisis plays out. Let's see how Roe versus Wade plays out. Let's see how all this other stuff plays out, right? And all we can control is our response to what is going on right now. So do what you can, do some good, whatever you feel is right in your heart. Go ahead and do that, and keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep that mindset. Always remember that you control one thing, and that's how you respond to situations. Hope you guys like this one. Peace, everybody.